Oh, we went inside the book. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Non Sequitur. I'm here, of course, on Saturdays with my lovely, lovely co-host. Go ahead and give him a godless engineer welcome.
What's up, heathens? How y'all doing?
Fantastic. And how are you doing? I heard last night you had a pretty emotional stream.
Oh, I did. So a lot of the Skeptic Mafia members got together and they decided they were going to do a video collage of how both KC and I have positively impacted their lives and how much our content has meant to them and everything, and how much my tagline has actually meant to them, which is the stand up, use your voice. They talked about how it's really inspired them to stand up and speak out, and it doesn't matter if you're initially wrong or anything like that. That it's important to just stand up and use your voice, and it was very emotional. I wasn't expecting it, and they were like, "You gotta watch this." And then KC, she was like, "No, you really have to watch it like live on stream." So watched it live on stream, bawled like a baby, and now we're here.
Good deal. Well, that's awesome. Well, I could imagine that. How long have you been doing this?
I've been seriously doing it since about 2014, 2015.
So I mean, that's a good 5 years. It's probably untold amount of people that you've impacted. So it's really good that they surprised you like that. I have to go watch it just to watch you cry, though. I have to be honest with you. That's on my bucket list. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm going to be putting up my reaction to it by itself because I usually edit my Friday streams to where it's just the video that we looked at. And
Hmm.
so last night was Shock of God. And so I edited it down for just Shock of God, but I've got the recording on my computer, so I'm going to cut that out and I'm going to put it up as its own thing.
Now, when you responded to Shock of God, did you yourself get on a motorcycle?
No.
Okay.
I do have a motorcycle, but it's in storage right now, and it needs a lot of like work done on it
Yeah.
so that it can run
Hmm.
and stuff. So that's on my list of things to get done, but I would need to pay off a lot of debt first.
Hmm.
So I'm working on that.
What you should have done, what would have been absolutely hilarious, and what you still possibly can do, is to go like to a downtown area and rent one of those scooters that everybody's riding. You know, the little thing that you start with an app, and do your response on a scooter to Shock of God. That would be
just
genius.
just get like spend the money to get a GoPro, mount it on the scooter,
Yes.
and have it actually facing my face instead of what
Yes.
Shaka God does. Because Shaka God, he'll just have it on his like chest, and
Right.
it'll be looking out, and then he'll just be talking to himself. Ah, no, I'm gonna have a whole thing. I'll have no. You know what? I'll get two fucking GoPros,
This is
mount them on
genius.
that bitch, and then it'll be two different angles that I can switch from. Be like, ha ha, motherfucker.
I
Now
love
what?
it. I love it. Just because I'm curious, what is Shock of God up to these? What's he talking about these days? Because he's been doing it for forever.
Well, what? Okay, so what do you like? What do you remember him talking about?
I remember him. The thing that comes to mind when you ask me what I remember about him, there's a video of him on his motorcycle, and he's pulling up to this like stop sign, and there's another biker to the left of him, and he goes, "Hey, have you heard about or have you heard the good news or something like this?" And the other biker just goes and speeds off. I mean, just floors it and flies off of it. He actually made it in a compilation because I watched those. I'll admit this. I watched those Moto Madness compilations where you have
Yeah,
like the interactions between motorcycles, and he actually winds up in two of those for this event. So that's what I mainly remember him from. Other than that, it's just him riding on his motorcycle doing these diatribes about what's wrong with internet atheists and how we're just the scum of the earth. Blah 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 blah.
yeah. Well, I mean, pretty much the same thing. He shit talks atheist experience all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's still well. I mean, I guess he's been reduced to like disabling comments and ratings and stuff on his videos.
I should really think about that. Just kidding.
So you know, he pretty much does the same stuff. He has a list of things that he goes through every bike ride. Mm-hmm. Every bike ride, he has tons of ooh shiny moments where he's talking about other things that's not what the video's about. Mm-hmm. And he just basically trash talks atheists all the time. Oh. Yeah, except now he has like specific, like he's like, oh, another atheist has failed the Shock of God challenge. And ooh. I'm like, nobody's failed the Shock of God challenge. Because like his challenge is, can you prove that atheism is accurate and correct? When that's not like, that's like atheism doesn't claim to be accurate. It's just, I don't believe in a God. Like right. At its very basic form, right. It's just, I don't believe in a God.
Right.
And so it makes no positive. If somebody's making a positive claim, then you could challenge them on that positive claim. But mm-hmm. This whole, is it accurate and correct? It's just like a mantra to him. I feel like it's something that he chants to himself to convince himself that he's right about Christianity.
Right.
And,
I was going to say that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people, for some reason, there's a lot of people that, there are quite a few people within the sort of this like fringe community of Christians that like to lump, like if somebody that professes to be an atheist does something wrong, they then group, well, this is why all atheists don't have morals. This is why all the atheists are bad. But what they don't understand is that you can have shitty atheists just like you can have shitty Christians, just like you can have shitty Buddhists. Atheist is not a group or a club. We're just taking a stance on the question, do you believe God exists? And that's the only thing that ties us or unites us or groups us or anything like that. It's not a club or a religion or a group. As much as they like to say that it's a religion, it's not a fucking religion.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, I got distracted by something.
That's okay. That's okay. So tonight we're going to be talking about original sin, and in two parts. The first part we're going to be going through talking about. We're going to go with or grant the Adam and Eve story being real, and we're going to see if we can poke holes in that. And then we're going to look at original sin from the standpoint of what you have a lot of these days. Christians are saying, well, the Bible is not literal, it's meta, it speaks in metaphors, this sort of thing. So we're going to look at original sin from that standpoint. If Adam and Eve never existed, where did the original sin come from? And of course, like we always do, if there are any believers in the audience and you think you can answer this question, or you think that you can put up a defense for either the Bible being literal or the Bible being a metaphor, we invite you to come in. Just tag me in the live chat or tag Godless Engineer in the live chat so that one of us sees it, and we'll bring you in and you can state your case. GE told me at the beginning of the show tonight that he did a video with his alter ego. And I figured that I would pull up that video first and let Godless Engineer kind of go through the certain aspects and the contradictions that he raised within this frame. But when I pulled up the video, I thought it was hilarious. What you're seeing right now over here is the actual ad running on Godless Engineer's takedown of original sin. The Genesis story. Is the ad on GE's thing. So GE, why don't you go ahead and intro the video, and then we'll play a little bit, and I'm gonna put the link in the description, so to see the full video you can click it after the show and go watch that and watch GE argue with himself.
Yeah. So you're talking about for the ad or for my actual video?
For your actual video. I think the ad speaks for itself.
Yeah. So for my actual video, I decided to start looking at the contradictions, because there are a lot of times when people are like, well, these contradictions aren't actually contradictions. So what I wanted to do was take a critical look at the contradictions and provide it in an entertaining way, the supporting arguments for it, like not for the official stance from Christians, and then provide a more even-keeled, like, secular stance about how it either actually is a contradiction or it isn't a contradiction. So what I did was I have this alter ego that I've named Brocephus, right? This comes from he's a country singer star. I can't remember his name. Fuck. Anyways, the guy mentions somebody named Bocephus, right? And so what I did was I just said Brocephus, and he's basically a conservative, like, deep Southern hillbilly Christian that totally believes in everything in the Bible. He uses all the arguments of Christians and everything. So that's the mindset for that character. And then I'm there as just godless engineer to balance it out. So that's what I've done here, is have this alter ego where I'm just a fundamentalist Christian, and then there's also me.
I like it. So let's first of all, let's get through this ad really quickly.
If you don't know how to read biblical poetry, if you don't know the formal qualities of parallelism and expansion, you are missing out on 1/3 of the Hebrew Bible. Whatever theological background you have, you're going to have your own hypothesis, that is to say, your own plot and narrative. What the literary reading allows.
Do you have your own plot and narrative?
Well, no. I feel like he's going for it, like the Genesis account being more poetic or more allegorical rather than literal. Mm-hmm. So I'm not in disagreement. I do think that it's allegorical in order to teach a message, and that message being humans suck.
Yeah. I think we can all agree there, though. I think we can all agree.
Yeah.
Allows you to do is to find new details that work within that overall plot or narrative. Now the question becomes, what's the way in which the specific details and the particularities kind of show us the subtlety and the nuance to really bring to the fore these theological insights that are so important to our traditions?
The book of Genesis, which is the first book in the Bible, is profound, serious, and mysterious. Did all this start somewhere? And if so, where?
Profound, serious, and mysterious. I'll give you
serious business.
I'll give you one of those. Sir. Profound, I will give you. Serious, no. Mysterious, not so much.
And if there actually was a creator, he would actually have to be outside nature. He would.
Did you say if there was a creator?
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna skip you.
What's up, heathens? How ya doing? Today we're gonna be looking into who is actually responsible for original sin. Wait a second. There's no doubt who's responsible. I agree. That bitch
bastard
Eve.
Adam.
What?
First of all, whoa. What did I just do? I swear. Let me change that back. Go back.
Hey, are you tired of the media spinning the truth and pushing false narratives upon you? Well, take a look at this.
This is the next
Years, while the mainstream media has been pushing the whole Trump colluding with Russia narrative, the Epic Times has been covering Spygate, the truth.
Can we just take a second to appreciate the two ads that are running on your video right now? they're actively two things that you go up against: conspiracy theories and religion. This is fantastic. Okay, let's skip you.
What's up, heathens? How ya doing? Today we're gonna be looking into who is actually responsible for.
GE Inception. There's 3 G's on
Original sin. Wait a second. There's no doubt who's responsible. I agree. That bitch
bastard
Eve.
Adam.
What? Fucking traitor.
Okay, so if you want to see the rest of that video, you'll have to check out the, I'll put the link in the description right now, and then you can go and check that out. But did you go through the different contradictions? Do you kind of want to like go over them just very briefly right now when you're talking about the
Oh
two
yeah,
verses?
sure. I totally can. So in the Bible, there are a couple of contradictions surrounding original sin, and it's mainly about who's to blame for it. So if you look in 2 Timothy, you'll see what they call pseudo-Paul blaming Eve for being deceived by the snake and causing the fall of man. And that's one of the hallmark things about 2 Timothy and how we know that it is a forgery in Paul's name is because of how misogynistic it is and how the agenda of that book, as well as 1 Timothy and Titus, all of those are grouped together and they are looking to push a certain agenda. And of course, if you actually read the Genesis account, you have, Eve being deceived by the snake, and then Adam, eating the fruit because Eve told him to, basically. But that is a legitimate thing to do, to blame it on Eve. But also, you also have to recognize that they are the official Christian stance is that Adam is to blame ultimately for the fall of man. The reason why they say that, though, is because apparently Adam was made to be a leader. Eve was not. But that brings in a whole lot of other kind of problems that occur with their whole theology. Like you have some more progressive Christians that are like, well, no, God created man and women to be equal or whatnot. It's like, oh, okay, well then what about original sin? It's like, nope, that's all Adam's fault. It's like, oh, because he was created to be a leader. Oh, so not equal with Eve then, right? And that's where you kind of get into exposing how they don't actually support like the equality of the genders or the sexes or whatever. But anyways, so the official stance is that Adam is to blame for the fall, and that's per Paul's writing in 1 Corinthians, or maybe it was Romans. I can't remember which right now. It was either Corinthians or Romans. But officially, Paul blames Adam, and that's the official Christian stance, is that Adam is to blame. But there is a contradiction in there because of the Genesis account in general, and then also with how other Christians were interpreting the Genesis account, being that that Eve was ultimately to blame. So there is a contradiction in the Bible surrounding like who was actually responsible for the fall of man.
And who was actually responsible, Jiggy?
Well, I mean, honestly, ultimately, I would have to lean with the Eve. Like, if Eve hadn't have been deceived, then then the fall of man would have never happened. But I'm so conflicted on this because, sure, you could blame it on Eve easily. You could blame it on Adam easily. But it was God, ultimately, that needed it to happen. So I guess technically I would fall on the option C and blame God for the fall of man because God put that motherfucker right in the middle of the Garden of Eden. And he told them, don't eat from this tree. And then, he's also responsible for, Satan even being there because God is responsible for everything. It's all part of God's plan. So it's ultimately God's fault that man fell. I mean, he could have chosen to put that fucking tree on, the top of Mount Everest or just somewhere that's not in the Garden of Eden. Could have kept that shit safe, but nope, he put it right in the middle of the goddamn garden.
But then we wouldn't have the fun story.
No, we wouldn't, would we?
Okay, so let me pause this and okay, so we're going to start tonight with a video from Friar Robert Barron. Or is it Father? Is FR Father or Friar?
I'm fairly certain that's Friar. I don't think that would be Father.
I didn't even know.
I don't think they spell out. I don't think they like abbreviate Father.
I can't. I can't. I thought that friars went out with like Robin Hood.
Let's see. Oh no, it is Father.
Ah,
FR is written as an abbreviation for Father when choosing titles for a Catholic priest. So it is Father. Fuck.
all right.
Today I learned.
We need that. We need that NBC The More You Know star to fly across the screen now.
Okay, look. Casey just said that me growing up Catholic, I should have known that. That would require me paying attention to the Catholicism that was being taught to me.
Yeah.
That just didn't happen. Like, I got the good parts, but, like, other stuff that I didn't really care about, I didn't pay attention to.
You know that being a Catholic, you weren't really Christian, right?
Oh, what the fuck? No, they're Christian. They believe in Jesus. They believe in the Christ.
Nope. Sorry. Okay, so let's hear what Father Robert Barron has to say about original sin. Very poppy video, very...
Well, the beginning of Lent is a time for a sort of spiritual spring training. Here's what I mean. When I was playing sports as a kid, we'd begin always with the fundamentals. And even if you've been playing for a while and you were quite good, the coach would still, during spring training for baseball or summertime for football, would bring you back.
Isn't it like most situations like this where they're always going to put in sort of like a sports analogy at the very beginning, so that you can kind of be relatable?
Right.
Like
I mean, sports ball. Everybody knows sports ball, right?
Yeah. Well, not me.
Shoot a field goal, guys.
All right, Father Barron, what you got? What you got?
Fundamentals. I think of Jack Nicklaus, the greatest golfer ever. At the height of his powers, he was the best golfer in the world. He would still begin the season by flying to see his friend Jack Grout, who was his childhood instructor. And Jack Grout, the basics. Lent is a time when we do that, and that's why the readings during Lent are really good. They're real archetypal, elemental.
Yep.
Well, the first reading for the first Sunday of Lent has
Hold on, pause.
do with the creation of human beings.
Yep. See, look, they're elemental, right? So of course he's first got to talk about wood. All right, so there's God. He's sitting right there, and he's looking at Eve, and he's pointing at Adam's dick like, now listen, Eve, to keep him happy, you're going to have to suck it, okay?
This it was like last week. What was the thing last week? The Ark of the Covenant is like a four-headed dildo or something like that? Okay. I just had to get back to that. Somebody draw that, please.
And the fall from grace in the garden. There's no better place to look for the fundamentals of the spiritual stuff than that story. Here's the first thing we hear. It says, the Lord God formed the first man out of the clay of the earth and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Very important claim now. First of all, God made us from the clay of the earth. That means that we are embodied realities. Our bodies indeed come from the molecules and minerals and stuff of the earth.
What? We are not dirt people. Like, I mean, that's what he's saying. It's like God formed us out of clay. He sneezed on the dirt, and then he rubbed his cum in it to shape it, right? And then he breathed life into us because he's a freak like that. All right, so we're dirt people. That's what we are. I mean, even in the infancy Gospels, you got Jesus Christ pissing on some mud or pissing on some dirt, and then fashioning that muddy piss dirt into birds, and then he breathes life into them. Right? And they fly away. Piss dirt birds.
We are not dirt people. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. In case you were wondering, We are not dirt. Hashtag we are not dirt people. Hold on. Let me write that down. Let's go.
Write that down. That's a really good one. I'm gonna bring that one up at Thanksgiving.
We are not dirt people. You know that a comma can change everything there. If you put a comma after dirt, you can totally change the structure of the sentence. We are not dirt people, or we are not dirt people. That was cold.
You know, it works both ways, but I meant it the one without the comma.
Okay, all right. I think we can stop. We can stop the show now. It's not going to get any better.
Did I kill the show? I'm sorry.
No, I mean like we won't be any funnier than that. We won't be any funnier than we are not dirt people. Like that's the line of the night.
No, you give me the right setup in one of these videos.
I'm sure Father Barron can do that.
We, with our scientific perspective, know better than biblical people how embodied we are, how grounded we are in the planet. Wasn't it Carl Sagan that said ultimately we're all star stuff because all the basic atoms and molecules and so on were created in the furnace of ancient stars that eventually found their way into the planets and so on.
Okay, you can't have it both ways here. You see you can't have it both ways. You can't say that we are all like. What are you saying, Father Barron? We are all made up of the same thing as stars, yet we were fashioned out of dirt and we are not dirt people.
Yeah, we're not dirt people. So it feels like he's double speaking here because to be fair, most Catholics do believe in things like evolution and the Big Bang, but he's talking about the Genesis account as if it were literal history, but also talking about the Big Bang and the scientific discoveries that we've made surrounding the origins of the universe as literal history, or at least literal science or scientific facts as well. So I mean, he's kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth at this point.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So we are indeed made from the clay of the earth. Spiritually speaking, it's very important.
No. No, we are not. You can't just nonchalantly say we are indeed made from.
Well, I mean, he's equating the whole "we are star stuff" thing with, the fact that everything in the universe, or at least everything in our solar system, was made out of basic elements, and these basic elements are forged in the dying centers of stars. And when the stars explode, they spill out all of those elements that they were able to create in their furnaces, spill them out, and then they eventually collect and form solar systems and shit. And I guess on a very high level, you could try to make that particular equivalence, but just because that is the reality of the situation does not necessarily mean that we were made of dirt. Like, there's a pretty big difference between the building blocks of life that were here on Earth 4.5 billion or so years ago and the dirt.
Yeah. You would think.
Okay, important, because the problem that we have, and I'll get to that, we do have a problem, but it's not with our bodies. It's not our physicality that's the problem.
Okay.
Now, there are a lot of theories, as you know, Manichaeism and Gnosticism and dualism and Puritanism, up and down the centuries.
Bullshitism.
Bullshitism. That's what all of it's under. They're all separate branches of bullshitism.
Dirtism. Is that a thing? Can we make that a thing? Dirtism.
Churchism?
Dirtism.
Oh, dirtism. I think we just did. Dirtism. We're all fucking made out of dirt.
You know that? What is that song? By Moby. We are all made of stars. Just do the remix.
Yeah.
We are all made of dirt. Just somebody dove in every dirt. Gives a whole new meaning to the Joe Dirt series, right? Joe Dirte.
I love Joe Dirt.
We are not Dirte people.
So Casey wants me to tell you that you should make a song out of that since you're the music guy.
I might do that actually. That would be funny. We are all made of dirt.
Called dirt.
Yep.
And the idea there is to get away from the fallen body. The body is the problem, our emotions, our sexuality, our passions. That's not biblical. That's not biblical. The Bible affirms that God makes us from the clay of the earth, and everything that God makes is good. That's not the problem. The second thing is, we're made from the clay of the earth, and God has breathed into our nostrils the breath of life. There's that great, the Hebrew term is ruach, breath or wind or air. Greek has that as pneuma.
Okay, we're nearly halfway into this video, nearly halfway, and he's still on the dirt. He's still on the dirt, people.
Yeah, he's still on the dirt, people. Also, I love how, like, apparently you can have just bare Christian titties, like, on YouTube now. Like, as long as it's part of an old painting, you could have Christian titties up and down this fucking video. It's okay as long as it's Christian. As long as you got God there, it's fine.
Is that the Christian version of bare naked ladies?
It'd just be one bare naked lady.
Oh yeah. From the rib. Father Barron, please get to the
Hence
original
our
sin
pneumatic
part.
tires. Latin has it as spiritus, right? God has breathed into this earthy stuff his life. It's very important, isn't it? There is
So God was Freemason dirt, was he?
Why make us out of dirt though? Like if he fashioned the universe out of, you know, nothingness, why did he pick the dirt? Like, why did he just I don't know, what do you sculpt people out of?
I don't know, but I don't know why God is fucking huffing dirt like it's goddamn aerosols.
an aspiration to God. Our minds that seek not just particular truths, but the truth itself. Our wills that seek not just particular goods, but goodness itself. Our souls that won't rest until they come to the beautiful itself. There is in these bodies of clay something of an aspiration upward toward God. If Gnosticism and dualism negate the first part of that, secularism negates the second part. What we have today on display, secularism, that life is reducible to matter.
I don't think that's what secularism says.
Pretty sure.
Life isn't just reduced to matter.
No. There's so much like what he's doing, I think is I mean, obviously it's disingenuous, but he's setting up this entire question about original sin by spending half of his time talking about how fashioned we were, how carefully crafted out of mud and dirt, and the steps that, you know, the dramatic breathing in to that dirt.
I mean, if God fashioned us out of dirt, I mean, how detailed can you get with dirt? Let's be honest. I mean, if you look at fucking sandcastles and shit, I mean, you can get pretty detailed, but I don't, like, he would have to fashion our stomachs and everything, and it's like, I'm going to fashion this pancreas to randomly fail at some point in this fuck's life. Yep, that's what I'm doing, and then I'll breathe life into him, and he'll definitely get cancer later.
Mr. Sandman.
Bring me some cancer!
Bum, 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 bum.
What I've described there as the aspirations upward toward God are reduced to the level of psychological quirks or wish-fulfilling delusions. Secularism denies this breath of God that animates us. Biblical vision, in its genius...
We deny it because it's bullshit. That's why we deny it. We don't deny it out of a need to, like, I don't know about you, but if you saw that there was evidence, there was things that could lead you to a conclusion that said, wow, there was something that breathed in life to this pile of dirt, I don't see any reason why you, me, or anyone else would deny that, would say there's nothing to that, would say that, you know, but in this time of information and science advancements and everything else, we have a pretty good idea about how life started, well, not started, but how life began to evolve down different avenues, none of which lead back to an avenue of a deity that breathes into dirt that I've seen.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
No.
Has both very clearly. Both the clay of the earth and the breath of the divine life are in us. Here's second great insight now from this story. God takes his first human beings and he places them, it says, in a garden full of delightful things to see and taste and experience. He gives them practically free rein. Eat of all the trees in the garden save one, and I'll get to that. But first look at the extraordinary permission. God wants his human creatures to flourish in this garden. There's nothing of the ancient mythological idea of the gods and human beings in a rivalrous relationship. The true God, who makes everything from nothing, can't be threatened by his creation.
Except he didn't make his creation from nothing. He made it from dirt.
Yeah. Well, I like how a lot of the Christian apologists and online assholes, they'll always talk about how science says, oh, everything was created out of nothing. It's like, no, that's not what we say. That's what you say. You just add a fucking wizard in the middle of it to actually do it.
Yep. I agree. All right.
Nothing from it, demands nothing from it for his own, well-being. And therefore, God's delight is that we be fully alive. We're in a garden, not in a desert. More to it, the church fathers saw this.
Can you imagine the amount of people you could make from a desert?
Oh, shit, you can make a fucking army. I don't know why we don't do that now.
Trees, and we're given liberty to eat of all these trees, represent all that makes life wonderful. Philosophy and art and science.
Do you know what he's doing here? He's saying anything he can to avoid getting to that. Why they couldn't eat of that one tree? He's avoiding. We're over halfway through this video.
Yeah, honestly, I would really love to see a Catholic priest or something do a video just like this where he bullshits the entire time, but the last 5 seconds he's like, oh yeah, that bitch Eve ate that fucking fruit, and now we're fucked. And it just ends with that. Just it's like the entire video, and then boop at the end, it's like, oh yeah, bitch Eve fucked us up.
That's excellent.
Stimulating conversation, friendship, politics, sexuality.
Get to it, Father Barron.
Life wonderful is represented in the trees of the garden, and God says, eat of them all. Eat of them all. This is not a God who's trying to limit the human project, but rather the one who says, your being alive fully is my glory. That's the biblical God. Okay.
What? He's not trying to limit them? What the fuck is this guy even talking about?
Father
Barron. I'm not trying to limit you guys, but here are some limitations, okay?
Father Barron. Look, I know this is hard, okay? This is really hard having to admit that there's some quirky stuff going on, but you titled this video Original Sin, and so far all I'm hearing is breathing alive dirt, and how happy everything was in the garden. Well, let's get to when things took a bad turn, please.
So how about the prohibition?
Oh,
we do hear that they are prohibited from eating from one tree.
Right.
Which is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Well, God is the unconditioned good. Therefore, God is in his own being the criterion of good and evil.
So if it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, does that mean that they didn't realize what they had prior to eating of that tree was good? Like if you have...
Well, no, see, that's... Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just gonna say, I mean, that's one aspect of this contradiction that adds even more contradictions onto it, because, I mean, either Adam and Eve already knew what was good and what was evil, or what was right and wrong and everything. They knew beforehand. Like, they would have to have knowledge of right and wrong to know that it was right to follow God and wrong to disobey him. But then they get blamed when they disobey, when they are deceived by the serpent, which they don't actually say a snake. And if you ask Ken Ham, the serpent had 4 legs, and then, of course, afterwards he lost his legs because he tricked Eve into eating the fruit. But it's such a blatant contradiction here, because there's no way for them to know that it would have been a bad thing. Like, they didn't know that it was a bad thing to disobey God. Regardless of whatever, like, kind of consequences God would have laid out for them, like eating the fruit and disobeying him, they wouldn't have known those things were good or bad, because they literally had no knowledge of what was good or bad.
Yep. So the salamander then turns into a snake. Is that what I heard from Ken Ham?
If you cut off all of its legs, I guess. How savage are you?
Don't do that. We do not endorse turning salamanders into snakes. It doesn't work that way, okay? Not biologically. So don't do that.
God is the measure of good and evil in his own being. Therefore, this prerogative belongs to God alone, to know good and evil. What's the original sin?
Okay, so again, I have to ask. If you're told not to eat of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what good and bad is, or what good and evil is, or that it's bad to disobey God, or that it would be, like, how could you expect your creation not to, because they don't have any knowledge that if they eat of it, that's a bad thing? I
don't know.
I need you to know. You're supposed to be the expert. It's definitely not me. So you have to come up with something on the fly. Just make it look like what
okay.
we're talking about.
So basically, when God was telling Eve to, like, not eat this fucking fruit because I know you're going to eat it later, he was looking at Adam at the same time, being like, listen, you got to keep them in line, okay? Now, y'all got to follow these things. I need you to nod your head and say, yes, we will. And I need you to not forget this shit like I know you're going to forget later. But, so, I mean, God already knew all this shit was going to happen. So, I mean, it's really just God's fault.
The original problem is arrogating to ourselves the prerogative of determining good and evil. When our wills
everywhere in this
become
video.
The criterion and the measure rather than God. That, I would submit to you, it's a very subtle point. It's not really so much a particular offense. It's not as though, murder is the original sin, or thievery, or adultery. It's something more subtle and more fundamental than any of the particular sins. It's the move of arrogating to ourselves the prerogative of determining good and evil. That's the original calamity.
What?
That sounds like a whole lot of bullshit there.
Yes. Yeah, that is a lot of bullshit all piled up into one man-sized fucking thing. You think that maybe that's what God fashioned us out of? A bunch of bullshit.
Bullshit. No. I know
I really don't understand the point that he's trying to make here. That is he trying to say that, like, humans were trying to decide what is right and wrong at this point, and then we were put back in our place? I guess.
So. I think that's the point he's trying to make. I think he's trying to say that Adam and Eve decided at some point that they should be the arbiters of what is good and evil by picking the fruit and tasting of the fruit. But why was the fruit there in the first place?
That's a good question, but also, like, I don't, like, if you just read the Genesis account, it's not like Eve was like, well, you know what, I think God don't know shit, okay? I'm going to listen to this trouser snake over here, I'm going to go and eat that fruit, and everything's going to be good, okay? Because I know what's right and wrong. It's like, God said, don't eat this. It didn't matter what kind of tree it was or what the purpose of the tree it was. It was just, oh, God said, don't eat this. And so the snake's like, God's just bullshitting you with that stuff. And so what is Eve supposed to do? Eve doesn't know that it's wrong to not to follow the snake or to listen to the trouser snake. She doesn't understand any of that to be wrong necessarily. She just knows that it's a fucking animal that's talking to her, and maybe she should listen.
That's a good point. That's a very good point, actually. I mean, how many other times did you hear in this story about there being other talking animals? And like, I'll tell you this: if I'm in a place, if I'm in my garden, right, and my mother tells me, "Look, I've grown all of these grapes, and there's apple trees, and there's orange trees everywhere, right? You can have all of them, but don't eat of the cherry tree. Do not eat the cherries." And I'm just happen to be hanging out, maybe reading a book, Isaac Newton style, underneath a cherry tree, or George Washington style. That would make more sense than but, and then this snake, slithers or crawls, depending on if you're Ken Ham or you're in reality. And it slithers up beside you, and it says, "Hey, those cherries are banging. Take one." I'm probably going to eat a cherry because, number one, I've never been around a snake that tells me to eat cherries. And it's not biting me. It's telling me to eat something. So I'm probably going to listen to the snake. That's a very good point, GE. I think you nailed it.
Well, I mean, later on in the Bible, you got this guy who's abusing a donkey, and then God makes the donkey talk, and we're supposed to listen to the animal speaking then. Why wouldn't we start off by listening to the animal speaking?
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's a lot better than, you remember, the story about, I always call him Baldy, but I'm not sure who it is. The bald guy who has very thin skin, and the kids are mocking him. They're talking about his baldness. And so God sends...
that's Elijah.
Yeah, so God sends the she-bears.
I mean, I always imagine these things as like these little dramatic dramatizations that you see, and it's just like a bald guy's walking up some steps, and the kids are making fun of him, and then they just zoom in on his face, and he's like, "And then God sent 2 she-bears to fuck up them little shits."
But how bald do you have to be? How bald do you have to be for the punishment for making fun of this bald man? Is that she-bears are going to tear you to pieces? Like, how bald is that?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's just like he's just like, "I'll show you who's bald," and then fucking bears descend upon the kids. It's like, y'all won't be doing that again, will you? And it's like, no, I'm fucking dead.
She-bears. It's such a wonderful story. It's such a lovely story.
So there's this game out there called Fight of the Gods or something like that. Can't remember, but it's got it's got all the different gods from the past in it, like Zeus, and it's even got Jesus in it and Moses. But I would really love to see Elijah in there with like 2 she-bears on fucking chains. And it's like that. It's like you build up your power, and then you can activate your she-bears, and it comes in and fucks up your opponent.
How can you battle against she-bears?
You can't.
You can't. Zeus is yeah. Zeus doesn't have a prayer. Okay.
Calamity from which human misery has followed as surely as night follows the day. Now, if you're tempted to say this
Don't
is
be so dramatic,
just a lot
Father
of
Barron.
abstract theological musing, let me submit to you something I've discussed before: the famous decision of the U.S. Supreme Court in the matter of Casey versus Planned Parenthood. So, writing for the majority in that famous case, Justice Kennedy opined as follows. Now listen. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence, of meaning, of the universe, of the mystery of human life. That's the U.S. Supreme Court, 1992. Frankly, I can't imagine a clearer expression of eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil than that statement. that it belongs to the
So,
Fuck's sake. Is this real? This can't be real.
so basically, the justice that wrote for the majority on the Casey versus Planned Parenthood thing was a perfect example of original sin.
Makes sense.
Like, we shouldn't be able. Like, I wonder if he thinks that, like, Carl Sagan that he brought up earlier. I wonder if he bit of that particular fucking fruit too.
Oh, you know.
Because I mean, I can't think. I really don't think Sagan would have been like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll let God define my existence."
I don't like the way that he set up this video, like, at all. He set it up with, number one, trying to smash Carl Sagan and the Genesis account together. They couldn't be more on opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of their stances. Then he's going to go down a narrative for more than half of his video where he's talking about the fine line by which we exist, that we were shaped out of the earth, we were breathed into, we were crafted. And if I have another question, if the Bible says we are made in God's image, does that mean that someone made God out of dirt? Like, is God like God dirt?
No, God is an amorphous blob that just sort of sits up there and he judges you silently. Because, he doesn't want to tell you to your face that you're fucked up. But he'll silently sit there and he'll be like, "Oh, that's a fucked up motherfucker." And then he'll flip that switch and send your ass to hell.
Oh, that's the best line. He judges you silently. Oh my God, I can't breathe. It's getting warm in here. We are not dirt, people. We are not dirt. These are the two things you should take away from the Bible after tonight. We are not dirt, people. And if you make fun of bald people, you will get attacked by she-bears.
the very nature of liberty, my liberty, to determine the meaning of everything, of my life, of the mystery of the universe. That's the arrogating to ourselves the divine prerogative that the Bible identifies as the fundamental problem. And look, the Supreme Court gives formal legal expression to what's...
Do you notice what he's doing? Or what he's... Let me rephrase that. Do you notice the lack of what he's doing? Like, he is talking about everything except for the original sin part. Because it doesn't make sense. And so he has to put a lot of words and bring up a lot of examples and invoke the Supreme Court and Carl Sagan and we are all stardust and all of this stuff, because he cannot discuss the issue of original sin on its own, on the single basis of what is it and why does it exist and does it make sense that this happened. He can't do it, period.
Well, no, because then he has to admit that God was kind of a bitch.
Yeah, or dick. God was dick. And that's the point that I want somebody to explain to me. If you strip the story down and you take it for truth that Adam and Eve were real people, that they were breathed out of dirt, and Eve was fashioned out of a rib. Of all the places on this planet, if the planet, I assume the planet would be the same size it is now. There's no indication that the Earth grew as time went on.
Well, that kind of depends on who you talk to. You talked to Kent Hovind, and it was a different shape back then.
A different shape?
Well, no, not like a completely. I just meant like it was a different size, is what I meant. Because he has this whole idea that there was a 1 mile thick layer of water 100 miles underneath the crust that erupted out and
For
like
the flood?
sprayed things. Yeah. And so he doesn't understand how that would require the Earth changing in shape or changing in size to expand to fill that area, Like he doesn't understand how that shit would have to work.
Kent, of all the broccoli, the whale penis. Can you can you just, since we're on Kent, can you talk about the whale penis? Please.
I would love to hear Kent Hovind talk about whale penis again. You know, honestly, I was trying to play that entire debate like straight face. Like I wasn't gonna be like you know my usual self. I was gonna be serious. But then he brings up whale penis just out of nowhere. It's like, oh yeah, those are vestigial limbs. No, they need them limbs in order to control that 15-foot whale penis. It's just out there, just going. Woo! And so they need to be able to direct that shit.
He knew, like he was on to you. He played you. He knew that the godless engineer is acting too serious. Let me take a sip of water, and then bring out whale penis.
The whale penis.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Generally taken, talk to most people today, as the truth of things. How many people, especially young people, would say something like, look, you know, right or wrong, that's a matter of my personal decision. Before you get to any particular sin, any particular offense, that's the fundamental calamity, the fundamental twisting or dysfunction that the Bible identifies as the problem. It's very interesting to me that right after the fall, Adam and Eve realize that they are naked and they seek to cover themselves. Now, I wouldn't read it primarily as a question of shame. I'd read it rather as an intense and deeply uncomfortable self-consciousness. See,
Okay.
You should feel
I like how it's
an inordinate
become
amount
like a moral
of
argument.
self-consciousness.
I'm sorry,
right now.
what?
I was just saying to him, he should feel an inordinate amount of self-consciousness right now after this video. Anyway, go ahead.
I like how he's kind of turned this into like a moral argument, you know, because he's talking about determining like what's right and what's wrong. Like everybody can determine that for themselves. When in actuality, I mean, that's all that we've ever done. Like there's never been a point in history where we've had objective truth about what's right and wrong. Hell, we're probably wrong about some things that we think are right now.
Yeah, like there are some people that think that Nickelback is a good band. That's objectively wrong. That's objectively wrong.
But I mean, even with the Christian church, like even with the Catholic Church, you have them being wrong on things, like theologically wrong on things. I don't know if you remember this, but like prior to, I want to say, it was one of the popes. One of the popes just come out one day. He just pokes his head out, you know, of his little pope hole, and he's like, "Listen up, motherfuckers!
Wait.
There is no limbo. Okay, all your dead babies, they're not in limbo. They are in heaven, sucking Jesus' dick. Thank you."
Did you say pope hole?
Yeah.
Hold on, I gotta write that one down too. Pope hole.
Are these going to be T-shirt ideas?
I don't know. I don't know what to do with them, but they're too good to just let go. You know what I mean? Like you have to write. You have to encase them for forever. But that brings up another good point. A lot of it is arbitrary. A lot of the things that we consider to be either doctrine or biblically sound, especially in the Catholic Church. For example, you have priests today that you can't get married. And a lot of people think, myself included for the longest time, thought that was an instruction from God somewhere, that you needed to be celibate in order to, you know, better understand the Word of God or something like that. But that's not true. That was something that a pope decreed down the line. It was something that mankind came up with, said that it was, you know, a divine instruction from God, and boom, you have popes for the longest time that had to be celibate, which I would argue is a huge factor in why most of the sexual abuse was rampant, because
Yeah.
those those hurdles, it led them to do really heinous acts, and that wasn't something that was divinely cast down from above. Just like the and the word escapes me. What is the official word from the church? I think it's the sale of indulgences, where you can buy your way into heaven. Like you can pay enough to the church, and you get rooms closer to God. Purgatory doesn't exist in the Bible, yet that's a concept that is, routinely held.
Well, yeah. Well, was it? I think it was purgatory that they. Well, I believe that there was a pope relatively recently that said that either purgatory or limbo wasn't real. But yeah, purgatory is not in the Bible, but it was or is a widely held position that it's that comes from God.
Yeah, and how fucked up is that? How fucked up is that? For the longest time, you had people that were told their loved ones, their kids, whatever, were in purgatory, and all they had to do was buy their way out of purgatory. And isn't the Pope supposed to be infallible? The spokesman for God on earth?
Yes.
If you have to backtrack and say, well, nope, that wasn't really a thing. Sorry. What are you talking about?
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't even know how they can get to, the Pope is the mouthpiece for God here on earth. He's got a direct line to God. But yet men are the ones that pick whoever is supposed to be the direct line to God. Like, what if God doesn't like that fuck? And he doesn't talk to him or something. It's like, I don't know why you picked this bitch.
He almost surely didn't like Ratzinger. No one, not even God, could like Pope Benedict XVI. I mean, he looked, number one, he looked just like the Emperor off of Star Wars. And two,
Palpatine, yeah.
Two, he resigned. Like, not even God liked that Pope. If you resign as a Pope, what does that say? I know that I am supposed to be the fisher of men here on earth, and my vote was divinely cast by the members of the Cardinal. But you know what? I'm just not into this. I'm just not into this whole Pope thing. I want to wear my red shoes and fly in by helicopters, and I'm out, bitches. Sorry. How does that work? It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. We're going to try to finish up here with the Pope. We might get to the second video this week. If we don't, that's completely fine. We'll leave the question open-ended and visit it again. But I think this was a fantastic video to start with.
I think if the good is outside of your own will and experience, the good is something that you discern in God and in the world that reflects God's wisdom, then you tend to be non-self-conscious. You tend to be looking outward. But the minute your will and your freedom become the determining elements in good and evil, then there's this tendency to turn awkwardly and uncomfortably inward. The clothing of Adam and Eve is a sign of their self-consciousness, their self-preoccupation. And that, I think, is on display every place in the fallen world. So,
okay, so this was obviously the tree of good, evil, and nakedness. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
That was almost like a visceral reaction from you. Yeah. It pisses me off.
The bottom line is, we're all unhappy. We live in the world that's fallen, that's followed from this original fall. If you want to find out, and Lent's a great time to do it, why are we so unhappy? To search out the deepest roots of that. I can't think of a better place to look than in this third chapter of the book of Genesis.
Okay. Why are... Okay. I'll give an example. I am unhappy now in this moment because of Father Barron. My boyfriend's mad at me. I didn't charge the studio lights, so I'm having to use these overhead UV lights. In this moment right now, I'm unhappy. For the most part, though, overall in life, I'm not unhappy. Are you unhappy?
No, I'm pretty happy, actually.
Okay, so what's he talking about when he says that trying to find a place or a reason why you're unhappy? I think he's trying to paint with a broad brush that everybody in life is miserable and trying to seek out the reason why. Do you feel, for the most part, everyone is miserable, like in their day-to-day lives?
I mean, I really don't think so. I mean, I think that if somebody is miserable, it's for their own reasons. But I don't think that everybody's trying to figure shit out all the time. I mean, sometimes you just have a shitty day.
Sure, I agree. But this is a tactic. It's a tactic that the Father is using by shaping the question. Everybody's miserable in their day-to-day lives, and we're just trying to figure out why. I don't believe that's the case. I think for the most part, like you said, everybody has shitty days, but I don't think this is. That was it.
That was it.
What? Father Barron, stop making YouTube videos, please. It's not Word on Fire. We need to set that video on fire. He didn't explain what original sin was, like at all.
No, because I mean he didn't do it in such a direct fashion. I mean, he's saying that original sin is us trying to determine what is right and wrong, and having that supersede what God thinks is right or wrong. But I mean, that doesn't really work, because Adam and Eve weren't trying to determine what was right and wrong or set what was right and wrong. Like, you know, they were just convinced to eat from the fruit, from the tree of good and evil, knowledge of good and evil, because they were convinced by a snake.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like they didn't have some kind of ulterior motive. They just did it. Like, they didn't know it was wrong. They weren't trying to make up their own moral code.
Yep. Okay, so that was the end of that video. I have another video that we're not going to get to today because we're already an hour and 15 into, and I know that that's going to take us a lot longer than 15 minutes to get through the second video, which is good. We'll just leave it open, so not the next week, because next week is already planned, but the following week we can get to the part 2. And the part 2, the question is, okay, that was if Adam and Eve were real, if that story was real. Do you have any thoughts, GE, first of all, on if Adam and Eve aren't real, where somebody of faith would say that original sin came from, if there's no Adam and Eve?
Right. Well, I think that it can. I think that you could still hold it as being allegorical, because while it may not have literally happened, it speaks to. It mainly just talks about how you're supposed to accept knowledge from God and adhere to knowledge from God.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what the story is supposed to teach you. That's the theological purpose of the story, is to tell you that it all started out by saying, well, I'm smarter than God. I know better than God. And so it starts off being very anti-knowledge right at the very beginning in Genesis. And so I think that would be a fine position for a Christian to hold. Even though it's blatantly fucking wrong, it's still, I feel like a position they could hold and not, be tied to, it being a literal story that's literally historically true.
So you don't think that the ultimate question that I have is, okay, in the Genesis account, if it's real, that means that there was a point at which, when she took the bite of that apple, that was the event that took place that allowed for all the way down the line to present day the things that take place that we blame sin on, the reason that sin exists in this world, the reason that Jesus came down and died and forgave the planet. So if that moment that she ate that apple is allegory or a metaphor and it didn't really happen, what event took place that caused Jesus to have to come down to die and forgive the world?
I don't know. Theologically, it's about mirroring and parallels, because Adam and Eve first had to kill an animal in order to eat and be clothed and everything like that, and that's why the whole ritual of like animal sacrifices and everything persisted. And then as a mirror or a parallel to that, God had his own son come down and give his life and have his blood cleanse and all this other stuff. So it's theologically it's due to parallel and other literary devices.
Okay. Well, we'll get a another reverend's point of view. This guy is known to everyone. Like I said, in 2 weeks we'll take on his video, but William Lane Craig will be taking us to the next question or the next video. But like I said, I don't think we have time to go through that tonight. I'm going to pull up your super chats. GE, do you have anything wrapping up while I'm pulling this up that you'd like to put out there?
No, I mean, not really. I have an anti-climate change video that I'm hoping to get out on Monday, so be watching out for that. And then it's just a normal week next week. Excellent.
And definitely check out that video of GE and Brocephus. Let me pull up this. Oh, no. Do you know anybody that uses Studio Beta?
I mean, I do.
Do you like Studio Beta?
Yeah.
I can't stand it.
I mean, it's got a very modern feel to it, and they're working on getting all of the features that are in the classic in there. And I think once they do that, I think it'll be a lot better. Already, like you can edit your videos and you can cut them down, cut them out, cut out sections if you want to, and there's a better way to add ad breaks and your end cards and everything like that. So I mean, overall, I mean, it's really good.
Okay, maybe I'll give it a second look. Yuhan Roderick says, "What's up, heathens? Check out the Iron Raw podcast." I'll go ahead and plug that for you. Yuhan. And RJ wants to know, what's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten, GE?
Oh, the weirdest thing I've ever eaten. Let's see. I guess it would have to be a whole ball of wasabi.
Oh, God. Why would you do that to yourself?
I mean, I don't know. Although I have to say, I did recently have crab, and that's a kind of a weird experience.
You had crabs recently?
No. Well, I had crab, like the food.
Oh, the food. Got it. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page. The weirdest thing I've ever eaten is probably Velveeta, because I'm still not sure what that is.
It's American cheese product. What the fuck are you talking about?
The product thing is what worries me. Okay? That's what worries me. Anytime you have to throw the word product on the end of that, that's not a good thing. Okay, well, Godless Engineer, this was a blast as always.
Yeah, I'm sorry I made us take so long getting through that first video.
It was. I wouldn't. I'm actually glad that we're going to do it into a 2-part series. I think it's. I wouldn't change. I mean, look, I literally have "We Are Not Dirt People" and "Pope Hole" out of that, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. So that was. That was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, are those the two quotes? Somebody asked you to read off all of the GE quotes that you got written down tonight.
Okay, I have. We are not dirt people. The Ark of the Covenant is a four-headed dildo. And Pope hole. I mean, you can't go. You can't go wrong. Shouldn't that be like a party dildo? You know, like somebody should actually make that, where it's like you got the box for the Ark of the Covenant and sprouting off the ends of it. It's just it's a dildo to share. Share the good news.
I can just see it right now. It's like, oh my God, what is that?
The Ark of the Covenant.
That is the Ark of the Covenant dildo set. Basically, you and three of your sisters, they fucked themselves on the ends of it.
or brothers, if you know they're into that.
Yeah.
We don't want to kink shame anyone here. Okay, that's a good mark to end on. I'm going to get drunk now. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to get drunk.
I'm halfway there.
Good. All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow with me and Jimmy at 9 o'clock, where we'll be, even better. We're going to be serenaded off. So I'm going to shut up now and let Bro Cephas take us out.
All let's bow our heads and pray to the masterful God. Dear God, we did not commit original sin. It was that bitch Eve, so let us go. Let us not suffer original sin.
Oh, honestly, I'd rather ride that that Ark of the Covenant dildo than have to. I'm just kidding. That was fantastic. Good night, everyone.
People are